Sarah Chen drummed her fingers on her workstation, staring at the data streams scrolling across her monitor. Another quiet night at the Planetary Defense Research Facility, at least until the equipment started going haywire. At first, she thought it was a glitch. The quantum sensors weren't exactly reliable technology yet, but as she cross-referenced the readings with backup systems, her heart began to race. Dr. Chen, her assistant Marco, poked his head through the door. "You need to see this." Sarah followed him to the observation deck. The night sky above the New Mexico desert was ablaze with dancing lights, unlike anything she'd ever seen. Her scientific mind immediately began cataloging possibilities. Aurora borealis, atmospheric phenomenon, military testing. But deep down, she knew this was different. "Get me Director Phillips," she ordered, not taking her eyes off the sky, "and start recording everything." The facility erupted into controlled chaos as more staff arrived. Sarah coordinated teams, deployed sensors, and tried to make sense of the increasingly bizarre readings. The lights were moving with purpose, forming complex geometric patterns that defied natural explanation. Dr. Chen, with picking up some kind of... Marco's voice trailed off as a new sound filled the air, a deep, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate through their bones. The lights converged into a single point, and then, in a flash that temporarily blinded their instruments, something appeared in the sky above the facility. When their systems came back online, Sarah found herself staring at what could only be described as a ship, sleek, organic-looking, and definitely not of Earth origin. "Ladies and gentlemen," Director Phillips's voice crackled over the intercom, "implement first contact protocols. This is not a drill." Sarah's hands shook as she initiated the procedures they'd rehearsed, but never truly expected to use. Years of studying theoretical xenobiology hadn't prepared her for the reality of actual alien contact. The ship descended with impossible grace, touching down on their landing pad as if it weighed nothing at all. "Dr. Chen, you're our xenobiology expert," Phillips said, appearing beside her. "We need you on the welcome team." Sarah nodded, her throat dry. She followed protocol, donning protective gear and joining the small group approaching the ship. Her mind raced with possibilities. What would they look like? Would they be hostile? Could they even communicate? A seam appeared in the ship's smooth surface, widening into an entrance. Sarah held her breath as a figure emerged. Her first impression was of grace, fluid movements that seemed to flow rather than step. The alien was tall, with iridescent skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Its features were surprisingly humanoid, though with an ethereal quality that left no doubt about its extraterrestrial origin. Then it spoke, and Sarah's world changed forever. "Greetings, people of Earth," the alien said in perfect English, its voice carrying harmonics that made Sarah's spine tingle. "I am Zaxthor, diplomatic envoy of the Galactic Council." Sarah stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. "Welcome to Earth. I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, xenobiologist." Zaxthor's eyes, multifaceted like diamonds but warm like amber, fixed on her. Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition that transcended species. "A xenobiologist. How fascinating. We have similar roles then, Dr. Chen. I study emerging civilizations." The formal introductions proceeded according to protocol, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something momentous had just occurred. She found herself assigned as the primary scientific liaison to Zaxthor, responsible for cultural exchange and biological compatibility studies. Over the next few days, Sarah learned that the Galactic Council had been watching Earth for centuries, waiting for the right moment to make contact. Zaxthor was part of a progressive faction that believed humans were ready to join the galactic community. "Your species fascinates me," Zaxthor told her one evening as they reviewed data together. "You're so young, yet you've achieved so much. Most species take twice as long to reach your level of development." Sarah looked up from her tablet, caught off guard by the admiration in his voice. "We're also warlike, divided, and probably not what your council considers civilized." Zaxthor made a sound that Sarah had learned was laughter. That's exactly what makes you interesting. Your conflicts drive you to innovate. Your divisions lead to diverse perspectives. Your imperfections make you beautiful. The word hung in the air between them. Sarah felt her cheeks warm, then immediately chided herself. She was a scientist, not some teenager with a crush. Besides, cross-species attraction wasn't just unprofessional, it was probably impossible. Yet as the days turned into weeks, Sarah found herself looking forward to their meetings more and more. Zaxthor's perspective challenged her assumptions about everything from physics to philosophy. His presence made her see her own world differently. "Tell me," he asked one night as they watched the stars from the facility's roof, "do humans still believe they're alone in their capacity for love?" Sarah turned to him, startled by the personal nature of the question. I don't know. We've never had the chance to find out." Zaxthor's skin rippled with colors she'd learned to associate with deep emotion. Perhaps it's time to change that. Before Sarah could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. They rushed to the control room to find chaos. Multiple ships had appeared in Earth's orbit, and they weren't responding to hails. "The conservation faction," Zaxthor said, his colors darkening. "They oppose contact with emerging worlds. They believe you should be left to develop in isolation, or be prevented from developing further." Sarah watched in horror as the ships began descending. "What do we do?" Zaxthor turned to her, his expression intense. "We prove them wrong. We show them that humans are ready, that our species can work together." He held out his hand, so similar to hers yet so alien. "Will you help me?" Sarah looked at his hand, then at the approaching ships, and made a decision that would change not just her life, but the course of human history. She took his hand. "Together," she said. As emergency protocols activated around them and the facility prepared for a potential confrontation, Sarah realized that this was more than just first contact. It was the beginning of a story that would challenge everything both their species thought they knew about love, loyalty, and the true meaning of civilization. The conservation ships were getting closer, and time was running out. But as Sarah felt the warmth of Zaxthor's hand in hers, she knew that whatever came next, there was no going back. Humanity's first steps into the galactic community would be guided by something more powerful than diplomacy or technology. It would be guided by the most human emotion of all, love. The conservation fleet's arrival had thrown the facility into chaos, but Sarah couldn't help noticing how calm Zaxthor remained. His iridescent skin pulsed with subtle patterns as he worked at the command console, coordinating with both Earth's defensive forces and his own diplomatic allies in orbit. "They're hailing us," Marco announced, his fingers flying over the controls. The main screen flickered to life, revealing another alien, this one with crystalline features that seemed carved from living diamond. "Envoy Zaxthor," the alien's voice crackled with barely contained disdain. "You exceed your authority. Earth is a protected system. These primitives are not ready." Sarah felt her face flush with anger, but Zaxthor's gentle pressure on her arm kept her quiet. "Council member Vextra," Zaxthor responded smoothly, "Earth has already detected quantum signatures. They've developed AI. They're on the brink of FTL theory. The time for isolation has passed." "Their technology advances faster than their wisdom," Vextra countered. "Look at their wars, their environmental damage there. Their art," Zaxthor interrupted. "Their music. Their capacity for love and sacrifice. Their endless creativity." His skin rippled with passionate colors. "When was the last time your species produced anything truly new, Vextra?" The crystalline alien recoiled as if struck. The transmission cut abruptly. "That," Sarah said slowly, "probably didn't help diplomatic relations." Zaxthor's skin flickered with what she now recognized as amusement. Diplomacy isn't always about being diplomatic. Sometimes it's about speaking truth. Over the next few days, a tense stalemate developed. The conservation fleet maintained orbit, while Earth's governments struggled to process the reality of not just one alien species, but an entire galactic community watching them. Sarah and Zaxthor worked around the clock, preparing reports, coordinating communications, and trying to prevent panic. But in quiet moments, Sarah found herself increasingly distracted by her alien colleague's presence. It wasn't just his otherworldly beauty, though that was undeniable. It was the way he looked at everything with such wonder, finding beauty in things she'd taken for granted. The way he asked questions that made her see her own world differently. The way his skin would ripple with colors when their hands accidentally touched. "Your species experiences love differently than mine," Zaxthor said one evening as they shared a rare quiet moment in the facility's garden. He developed a fascination with Earth's plants, especially the way they turned toward the sun. "How so?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice professional despite the intimate subject matter. "We feel it here." He touched his chest where his second heart would be. "Like quantum entanglement. Once formed, the bond transcends space and time." His colors shifted to deep purples and blues. "But humans, you love with your whole being. Messily, passionately. It's fascinating." Sarah swallowed hard. "You've been studying human love." "Among other things." His eyes met hers. "I find myself experiencing unexpected reactions to certain individuals. My species isn't supposed to be compatible with yours, and yet, the air between them seemed to crackle with energy." Sarah's scientific mind raced with questions about biochemistry and avian physiology, but her heart was pounding with much simpler concerns. Before either could speak further, alarms blared again. But this time, it wasn't the conservation fleet. It was something in the lab. They rushed to find Marco staring at readings in disbelief. "Dr. Chen, remember those compatibility studies we were running? The cellular interaction tests between human and galactic council species." Sarah nodded, suddenly nervous about where this was going. "Well, most species show complete rejection, but with Zaxthor's people, there's not just compatibility. There's synthesis. New cell structures we've never seen before. It's like the cells are dancing." Sarah felt Zaxthor move closer, his warmth radiating against her back as he studied the readings. "Impossible," he whispered, but his skin was blazing with colors she'd never seen before. The conservation faction, Sarah realized. This is why they're really here, isn't it? They knew this was possible. Zaxthor nodded slowly. "Our species has been stagnant for millennia. No new genetic combinations, no evolution. But humans," his hand found hers. "You could change everything." The implications were staggering, not just for their species, but for them personally. The attraction they'd been fighting wasn't just emotional, it was written into their very cells. "We should run more tests," Sarah said weakly, even as Zaxthor's fingers intertwined with hers. "Yes," he agreed, but neither moved toward the equipment. Instead, they stood there connected, as their cells danced together under the microscope. The moment was shattered by a new alarm. The conservation fleet was powering up weapons. But this time, they weren't aiming at Earth. "They're targeting the diplomatic ships," Marco reported. "They're going to start a war." Sarah looked at Zaxthor, saw the conflict in his ever-shifting colors. He was torn between duty to his mission and what was growing between them. "Whatever happens," she said firmly, "we face it together. Our species may be different, but some things transcend biology." Zaxthor's colors stabilized into a pattern she'd never seen before, beautiful and terrible in its intensity. "Together," he agreed. As they rushed to the command center, Sarah knew they were breaking every protocol in existence. But maybe that's what both their species needed, someone willing to break the rules, to prove that love truly could transcend the stars. The conservation fleet's weapons were charging, and Earth's governments were scrambling to respond. But in that moment, Sarah and Zaxthor had discovered something that could change the galaxy forever. Proof that humans and aliens could not just coexist, but create something entirely new together. Now they just had to survive long enough to prove it to everyone else. The conservation fleet's weapons remained charged, creating an eerie green aurora in Earth's upper atmosphere. Inside the facility, Sarah paced the lab, waiting for the results of her latest tests. Each passing minute felt like an eternity as the automated systems processed the data. "You should rest," Zaxthor said softly, his skin pulsing with concern. "You've been working for 26 Earth hours straight." "I can't rest," Sarah replied, running her hands through her disheveled hair. "Not until we understand what's happening." She wasn't just talking about the cellular synthesis anymore. The changes in her own body had become impossible to ignore. The lab computer chimed, drawing their attention. Sarah's hands trembled as she pulled up the results. Her eyes widened as she read the data, then read it again, unwilling to believe what she was seeing. She whispered, "That's impossible." Zaxthor moved closer, his natural bioluminescence casting a soft glow over the screen. His colors shifted rapidly as he processed the information, fear, wonder, joy, and concern all bleeding together in a spectacular display. "I'm pregnant," Sarah said, the words feeling strange on her tongue. "But the embryo, it's perfect," Zaxthor finished, his voice filled with awe. "A perfect fusion of both our species." The implications were staggering. Not only were their species compatible, but they had created something entirely new, something that should have been impossible according to everything they thought they knew about xenobiology. The conservation faction, Sarah realized, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. "If they find out—" "They won't," Zaxthor said firmly, his colors hardening into protective patterns. "I won't let them." Their moment of private revelation was interrupted by Marco bursting into the lab. "Dr. Chen, the conservation fleet, they're receiving reinforcements." They rushed to the command center, where multiple displays showed new ships emerging from what appeared to be tiers in space itself. The conservation faction was clearly done waiting. "They know," Sarah whispered to Zaxthor. "Somehow they must know about us, about the baby." Director Phillips approached them, his face grave. "We've received an ultimatum. They're demanding we hand over all research data," and he glanced at Sarah, "any evidence of cross-species synthesis." "That's not going to happen," Sarah said firmly, surprising herself with her conviction. She felt Zaxthor's approval radiating through his subtle color changes. "There might be another way," Zaxthor said, his skin pulsing with what Sarah had learned to recognize as deep thought. "The Galactic Council's laws are absolute about one thing: the preservation of new life forms." Sarah caught on immediately. "If we can prove that humans and your species can create viable offspring, they would be legally bound to protect it," Zaxthor finished. "And by extension, protect Earth. You want to announce your condition to the entire galaxy?" Phillips asked Sarah incredulously. Sarah squared her shoulders. "If it saves Earth and stops an interstellar war? Yes." The next few hours were a blur of preparation. Sarah documented everything: her medical readings, the cellular synthesis data, the early development patterns of the hybrid embryo. Zaxthor, meanwhile, contacted his allies among the diplomatic corps, building support for their revelation. "Are you sure about this?" Zaxthor asked her privately as they prepared to broadcast their announcement. His colors swirled with concern and love. "Once we do this, there's no going back. Our child will be the first of its kind, both a miracle and a target." Sarah took his hand, marveling at how natural it felt now despite their obvious differences. "I'm sure about us. Everything else, we'll figure it out together." The broadcast was sent simultaneously to Earth's governments and the Galactic Council. Sarah stood proud beside Zaxthor as they presented their discovery, their relationship, and their unborn child, living proof that the galaxy's species weren't meant to remain isolated. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. The conservation fleet's weapons powered down as they processed the legal implications. Earth's social media exploded with reactions ranging from celebration to horror. The Galactic Council erupted into unprecedented debate. But something unexpected happened too. Other couples, human and alien pairs who had been hiding their relationships, began coming forward. What Sarah and Zaxthor had started was becoming a movement. The council is convening an emergency session, Marco reported, monitoring the communications. They're demanding you both appear before them. Sarah felt fear grip her heart. The Galactic Council was legendary for its conservative nature and harsh judgments, but as she looked at Zaxthor, saw the unwavering support in his ever-shifting colors, she knew they would face whatever came next together. There's something else, Zaxthor said, his colors suddenly serious. My people, we have traditions for situations like this, ancient ones that even the Council must respect. What kind of traditions? Sarah asked, noting how his colors had shifted to deep, royal purples. I am of the high houses, he admitted, what humans might call royalty, and you're carrying a potential heir to that legacy. Sarah blinked, processing this new information. You're telling me our baby isn't just a diplomatic incident, it's a royal one too. Zaxthor's skin flickered with what might have been embarrassment. It gives us certain protections, but it also means that I need to meet your family, Sarah finished, feeling a very human kind of anxiety about meeting alien in-laws. As they prepared for their journey to the Galactic Council, Sarah couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. She had gone from studying theoretical xenobiology to being pregnant with an alien prince or princess's child in a matter of months. But as she felt the first subtle movements of their impossible child, as she watched Zaxthor's colors dance with joy when he sensed it too, she knew that some things truly were universal. Love, family, the desire to build something new. These weren't just human traits. They were the forces that could bind the galaxy together. The conservation fleet's reinforcements had arrived, but they weren't firing. They were waiting, just like everyone else, to see what would happen when humanity's first hybrid family presented themselves to the Galactic Council. Ready? Zaxthor asked, his colors swirling with determination and love. Sarah squared her shoulders. Ready. Let's go change the galaxy. The journey to the Galactic Council headquarters took 3 Earth days, though Sarah's perception of time became distorted as their ship traversed what Zaxthor called fold space. She spent much of the journey in their private quarters, struggling with a unique form of morning sickness that made her skin temporarily mimic Zaxthor's color-changing abilities. It's fascinating, the ship's medical officer had commented, her crystalline features twinkling with scientific interest. The fetus is actually altering your basic biology. You're becoming something new yourself. The ship itself was a marvel of organic technology, growing and adapting to its passengers' needs. Sarah found herself both thrilled and humbled by how much humanity still had to learn about the universe. Finally, they emerged into normal space near a massive structure that defied physics as Sarah understood it. The Galactic Council headquarters was a series of interconnected rings that spun in impossible patterns around a central star, each ring housing representatives from thousands of different species. Home sweet home, Sarah asked nervously, watching as their ship approached one of the docking arrays. Zaxthor's colors shifted to calming blues and greens. The council can be traditional, but they're not unreasonable, usually. That's not as reassuring as you probably intended it to be, Sarah muttered, placing a protective hand over her slightly swollen abdomen. Their arrival was met with a delegation that included members from at least 12 different species. Sarah's xenobiologist mind went into overdrive, cataloging the incredible diversity before her. Some were humanoid, others completely alien, and a few seemed to exist partially in dimensions she couldn't quite perceive. The conservation faction's representatives were there too, their crystalline forms radiating disapproval, but they were balanced by members of more progressive factions, including several who displayed subtle signs of support for Sarah and Zaxthor's union. The council will see you immediately, announced a tall, elegant being whose form seemed to be made of living light. Follow me. As they walked through the massive halls, Sarah felt the weight of history around them. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with the accumulated knowledge of countless civilizations. She glimpsed chambers where representatives from across the galaxy debated, traded, and shared cultural experiences. "Remember," Zaxthor whispered, his colors showing concern, "let me do most of the talking at first. Council protocol is complex." The council chamber itself was breathtaking. Thousands of representatives sat in rising tiers that seemed to stretch infinitely upward. The chamber center held a platform that hovered over what appeared to be a miniature galaxy, a living map of all known civilized space. As Sarah and Zaxthor took their places on the platform, the galaxy map beneath them zoomed in on Earth's solar system. A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. "Envoy Zaxthor," boomed a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once, "you stand accused of violating multiple council directives regarding interaction with developing species. How do you plead?" Zaxthor's colors remained steady as he responded, "I plead in accordance with the first law of universal development, that all new life forms must be protected and nurtured." Another voice, harsh and crystalline, cut through the chamber. "This is not about your hybrid offspring, Envoy. This is about maintaining the natural order of species development." Natural order? Sarah couldn't help herself. She stepped forward, ignoring Zaxthor's warning colors. What's natural about forcing species to remain isolated when they could be learning from each other, growing together? The chamber erupted in a cacophony of reactions. Some representatives recoiled at her boldness, while others leaned forward with interest. "The human speaks out of turn," the crystalline voice declared. "The human," Sarah shot back, "has a name, and more importantly, carries within her living proof that your natural order is based on fear rather than fact." Silence fell over the chamber. Sarah felt Zaxthor's pride radiating through his colors, though he maintained a diplomatic facade. The first voice spoke again, softer now. "Approach the galaxy map, Dr. Chen." Sarah stepped forward, and the map zoomed in further, displaying a detailed scan of her body. The hybrid child within her was clearly visible, its unique DNA structure glowing with possibilities that made even the most conservative council members lean forward in fascination. "In all our recorded history," a new voice said, this one ancient and wise-sounding, "we have never seen such perfect synthesis between species. The child carries the best of both genetic lines and something more, something new. That's exactly why this abomination must not be allowed to continue," the crystalline voice declared. "It could destabilize countless civilizations. Imagine if all species began interbreeding." "Imagine if they didn't," Sarah countered. "Look at your own histories. How many of your species have stagnated? How many have stopped growing, creating, evolving? Humans aren't perfect. We make mistakes, we learn, we change. That's our strength." Zaxthor stepped forward, his colors aligning with hers in a display of unity. "The conservation faction speaks of protecting species, but they practice stagnation. Earth has achieved in centuries what took many of us millennia. Why? Because they embrace change, even when it's frightening." The chamber buzzed with discussion. Sarah felt the momentum shifting, saw representatives nodding in agreement, but the conservation faction had one more card to play. "Very well," the leader said, his crystalline form glittering dangerously. "If you wish to speak of traditions, let us speak of the trials of union. Surely, if this human is worthy of joining the High House family, she will submit to the ancient tests." Sarah felt Zaxthor's colors flash with alarm. "The trials haven't been invoked in 1,000 years, he protested. "They're barbaric." "They are our law," the crystalline being countered. "Unless a human fears to prove her worth." Sarah squared her shoulders. "I don't even know what these trials are, but if completing them will protect our child and help bring our species together, I'll do it." The chamber erupted again, but this time in excitement. The trials of union were apparently something of legend, ancient tests designed to prove the worthiness of those who would join the great houses of the galactic civilizations. Dr. Chen, The first voice said gravely, "Do you understand that these trials could be dangerous? That no non-native species has ever completed them?" "I understand that some things are worth fighting for," Sarah replied, feeling her child move within her as if in agreement. "And humans, we're pretty good at beating impossible odds." The decision was made. Sarah would face the trials of union, while the council debated the larger implications of human-alien relations. As they left the chamber, Zaxthor's colors swirled with worry and pride. "You could have let me handle it diplomatically," he said, but his tone was admiring. Sarah smiled. "Diplomacy has its place, but sometimes you need to show them what humans are really made of." As they prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead, Sarah couldn't help but feel that this was about more than just their relationship or even their child. This was humanity's chance to prove they deserved a place among the stars, not as primitive newcomers to be protected and controlled, but as equals who could contribute something unique to the galactic community. The trials awaited, and Sarah Chen, carrying the galaxy's first human-alien child, was ready to show them all what humanity could do. The trials of union began at dawn, according to the artificial day cycle of the council station. Sarah stood in an ancient chamber, its walls covered in shifting symbols that seemed to watch her every move. Her pregnancy, now showing more visibly, had begun affecting her in unexpected ways. She could sense emotions like Zaxthor's people, and her skin occasionally flickered with faint colors. The Trials of Three announced the Council's chief arbiter, a being of pure energy contained within an ornate framework. Mind, body, and spirit, each designed to test your worthiness to join the great houses of the galaxy. No human has ever attempted them. "Then I guess I'll have to be the first to succeed," Sarah replied, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. The first trial, the trial of mind, took place in what appeared to be an empty room. But when the doors sealed behind her, Sarah found herself immersed in a virtual landscape of pure mathematical concepts and abstract patterns. To pass, the arbiter's voice echoed, "You must solve what cannot be solved." Sarah floated in the conceptual space, surrounded by equations and patterns that seemed to defy logic itself. Her scientific training screamed that none of this made sense. The mathematics violated every principle she knew. Then she remembered something Zaxthor had told her. Sometimes the greatest discoveries come not from finding new answers, but from asking new questions. Looking at the problem again, Sarah realized something. The solution wasn't about solving the equations. It was about understanding why they existed at all. Using her growing connection to alien thought patterns, she began to see the beauty in the impossible mathematics. "The solution," she announced, "is that there is no solution. These patterns exist to remind us that the universe is bigger than our ability to understand it. The true wisdom is in accepting that some things transcend conventional logic." The virtual space dissolved, and Sarah found herself back in the physical chamber. The arbiter's energy form pulsed with what might have been approval. "The first trial is passed," they announced. "Few see the wisdom in accepting the limits of their own understanding." The second trial, the trial of body, proved more physically challenging. Sarah faced what appeared to be an obstacle course, but one that operated in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Your physical form must navigate all possible paths," the arbiter explained. "Your hybrid child makes this both easier and more difficult." Sarah quickly understood what they meant. The pregnancy had changed her body's abilities, allowing her to partially perceive dimensions that normal humans couldn't access. But it also made every movement more challenging, requiring her to protect not just herself, but her unborn child. Drawing on both her human determination and her new alien sensibilities, Sarah began the course. She moved through spaces that folded in on themselves, navigated gravity fields that shifted without warning, and faced obstacles that existed in multiple states simultaneously. Several times she nearly failed, but each time she found a way forward. When a path seemed impossible, she created new ones. When conventional movement failed, she learned to flow like Zaxthor's people. Her body adapted, incorporating both human and alien techniques in ways never seen before. Extraordinary, one council member whispered as Sarah completed the course. She's not just passing the trials, she's showing us new ways to approach them. The final trial, the trial of spirit, proved the most challenging. Sarah found herself in what appeared to be a void, completely alone. Here, the Arbiter's voice echoed, "You will face your deepest fears, your greatest doubts. Many break under the weight of their own spirits." The void shifted, showing Sarah visions of possible futures. She saw her child rejected by both human and alien societies. She saw wars erupting over the implications of cross-species breeding. She saw herself growing old, while Zaxthor remained eternally young. But among the darkness, she also saw hope. Communities of humans and aliens living together, learning from each other. Children of mixed heritage bringing new perspectives to ancient problems. Love transcending the boundaries of species and space itself. "Our fears show us what we stand to lose," Sarah said into the void. "But they also show us what we're fighting for." The void responded, showing her more images, personal ones. Her parents' potential rejection of their alien grandchild. The possibility that the pregnancy might kill her. The fear that Zaxthor might one day regret choosing her. "Yes," Sarah acknowledged, "I'm afraid, but fear doesn't control me. Love does." The void erupted with light, and Sarah found herself back in the council chamber. Zaxthor was there, his colors blazing with pride and love. The assembled council members murmured in amazement. "In all our records," the Arbiter announced, "no one has ever completed the trials quite like this. You didn't just pass them, you transformed them. Your human perspective, combined with your growing alien sensibilities, showed us possibilities we had never considered." The conservation faction's representatives shifted uncomfortably. Their main argument, that humans weren't ready for advanced galactic society, had been thoroughly disproven. "The trials of union are past," the Arbiter declared. "But more than that, you have shown us why isolation between species is no longer sustainable. Your child will not be an aberration, it will be the first of a new way forward." Sarah felt Zaxthor's arms around her, his colors merging with the faint ones now visible on her skin. Their child moved within her, as if celebrating their victory. But even as the council chamber erupted in discussion about the implications of these events, Sarah knew their challenges weren't over. They had proven that humans and aliens could coexist, could even create new life together. But now they had to show their child, and all the mixed species children who would follow, how to navigate a galaxy that was still learning to accept change. "Ready for what comes next?" Zaxthor asked, his colors swirling with love and determination. Sarah smiled, placing their hands together over their growing child. "Together, we can face anything. After all, we've already changed the galaxy once. Why not do it again?" The council chambers buzzed with activity as representatives began drafting new laws to accommodate interspecies relationships. The conservation faction, while not entirely convinced, had been forced to acknowledge that their traditional views needed updating. And somewhere, in the space between human determination and alien wisdom, a new life grew, one that would embody the best of both worlds and forge a path for others to follow. 6 months after the trials, Sarah stood at the window of their quarters in the Galactic Council station, watching the cosmic dance of nearby stars. Her body had changed dramatically. Her skin now permanently shared Zaxthor's color-changing abilities, though more subtly, and her growing belly emanated a soft, ethereal glow that fascinated the station's medical staff. The latest scans are remarkable. Dr. Ktil, the station's chief xenobiologist, had told them that morning. "The child is developing characteristics never seen before in any species. It appears to be adapting and evolving even in the womb." The news had sparked another round of debate in the council chambers. Some saw it as cause for celebration, proof that species could not only coexist but evolve together. Others worried about the implications of such rapid biological advancement. Zaxthor entered their quarters, his colors swirling with excitement. "The embassy plans are approved," he announced. Earth will have its first permanent diplomatic presence here on the station. Sarah smiled, remembering how far they'd come from those first tense days in New Mexico, and the education initiative. Also approved, the first group of human students will arrive next month to begin cultural exchange programs. His colors shifted to softer, more intimate tones as he placed his hand on her belly, just in time for someone else's arrival. The baby kicked in response to its father's touch, sending ripples of color across Sarah's skin. Their child's development had become something of a sensation throughout the galaxy. Species that had been isolated for millennia were suddenly reaching out, curious about the possibilities of genetic and cultural exchange. The conservation faction made one last appeal, Zaxthor mentioned, his colors flickering briefly with concern. They wanted to classify our child as a protected species, kept in isolation for study. Sarah's colors flared with maternal protectiveness. I hope you told them where they could stick that proposal. Actually, Zaxthor's colors shifted to something like amusement. Your parents did. Sarah blinked in surprise. Her parents' arrival at the station 2 months ago had been tense at first. The idea of their daughter carrying an alien child had been a lot to process. But after seeing the love between Sarah and Zaxthor, after experiencing the wonder of their grandchild's unique development, they had become unexpected champions for human-alien relations. Mom told them that grandparents have rights in any civilization, Sarah laughed, and that she'd personally ensure those rights were respected. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden shift in the station's lighting, the signal for an important announcement. The main communication screen activated, showing the Council's chief arbiter. Attention all station residents, the energy being announced. The final resolution has passed. The Galactic Council hereby recognizes the right of all sentient species to pursue relationships, familial bonds, and biological unions with any other consenting sentient species. Sarah felt tears in her eyes as the announcement continued. The resolution included provisions for protecting hybrid children, supporting cross-species families, and promoting cultural exchange between previously isolated civilizations. Furthermore, the arbiter continued, in recognition of the transformative events that led to this decision, the Council has approved the establishment of the Interspecies Cultural and Scientific Exchange Center. Dr. Sarah Chen and Envoy Zaxthor will serve as its first directors. The station erupted in celebration. Even species that had previously supported isolation found themselves caught up in the historic moment. Centuries of separation were ending, opening up new possibilities for all civilized worlds. There's more, Zaxthor said softly, his colors pulsing with pride. My family's announcement should be coming through any moment. Sure enough, the screen shifted to show the royal court of Zaxthor's homeworld. His parents, their crystalline forms more elaborate than any Sarah had seen, stood before their assembled people. In light of recent events, the Queen announced, and in recognition of the changing nature of our galaxy, we hereby declare that the child of our son Zaxthor and his human mate Sarah Chen will be recognized as fully legitimate heir to the high houses, with all rights and privileges thereof. Sarah felt her knees go weak. Did they just make our baby a royal heir? They did more than that, Zaxthor explained, his colors bright with joy. They've acknowledged that bloodlines can be about more than just biological descent. It's unprecedented. The baby chose that moment to make its presence known, sending waves of color cascading across Sarah's belly. The patterns were complex, neither human nor alien, but something entirely new. Dr. Chen, a voice called from their communication panel. The medical team requests your presence. We're detecting some unusual readings from the baby. Sarah and Zaxthor rushed to the medical bay, where dozens of monitors tracked their child's development. Dr. K'tul met them with an expression of amazement on her crystalline features. The child, she announced, is ready. It appears that hybrid gestation follows its own rules. The next few hours were a blur of activity. The birth of the galaxy's first human-alien child drew observers from across the station, though most were kept at a respectful distance. In the delivery room, Sarah found herself surrounded by a team of doctors from various species, each bringing their own expertise to this unprecedented event. When the moment finally came, the room filled with a light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. That child entered the universe not with a cry, but with a burst of colors so brilliant they left afterimages in everyone's vision. "She's perfect," Sarah whispered, holding their daughter for the first time. The baby's skin shifted through colors like her father's, but her eyes were human, filled with the same curiosity and determination that had driven Sarah to reach for the stars. "She's more than perfect," Zaxter said, his colors merging with their daughter's in a display of paternal love. "She's the future." News of the birth spread quickly through the station and across the galaxy. Messages of congratulation poured in from Earth, from Zaxthor's homeworld, and from countless other civilizations. Their daughter, named Aurora for the lights that had danced in the sky when her parents first met, became a symbol of hope for a new era of galactic cooperation. As Sarah held her daughter, watching her shift between human and alien characteristics with effortless grace, she realized that this was just the beginning. Aurora would grow up in a galaxy very different from the one her parents had known, one where boundaries between species were becoming more fluid, where difference was celebrated rather than feared. "What do you think she'll become?" Sarah asked softly, watching Aurora reach for the stars visible through the medical bay's window. Zaxthor's colors shifted to a pattern Sarah had learned meant deep contentment. "Whatever she wants to be, that's the gift we've given her, the freedom to define herself beyond the limitations of any single species." As if in agreement, Aurora's colors danced in patterns never before seen in the galaxy, patterns that spoke of infinite possibilities and the promise of things yet to come. In that moment, watching their impossible child reach for the stars, Sarah and Zaxthor knew that while their story might have seemed like an ending, the conclusion of humanity's isolation among the stars, it was really just the first chapter in a much greater adventure. The galaxy was changing, evolving, growing together in ways no one had imagined possible. And it had all started with two beings from different worlds who dared to believe that love could bridge the vast distances between the stars. Aurora cooed, her colors painting pictures of futures yet to come, and her parents held her close. A family that proved that, in the end, the things that united sentient beings were far stronger than the differences that divided them. 5 years had passed since Aurora's birth, and the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Interspecies Cultural and Scientific Exchange Center had grown from a single facility on the Council Station to a network of campuses across dozens of worlds, including Earth. Sarah stood in her office at the New Mexico branch, watching her daughter play in the facility's biodiversity garden. Aurora, now looking like a 5-year-old human child, but with her father's color-changing abilities, was teaching a group of mixed-species children how to communicate through color patterns. "Just like Daddy taught me," Aurora explained to her fascinated audience, her skin rippling with educational patterns. The children, some human, some alien, and some hybrid like herself, watched in wonder as she demonstrated the basic emotional colors. "She's becoming quite the teacher," Zaxthor observed, his colors warm with paternal pride as he joined Sarah at the window. His diplomatic duties now included overseeing human-alien integration projects across Earth, but he always made time for these family moments. "Well, she has a unique perspective," Sarah replied, touching her slightly rounded belly. Their second child was due in a few months, and this pregnancy was proving even more fascinating than the first. Being first comes with responsibilities. The facility around them hummed with activity. In one lab, human and alien scientists collaborated on developing new medical treatments that combined Earth's biological diversity with advanced galactic healing techniques. In another, engineers from a dozen species worked on environmental restoration projects, applying alien technology to help Earth recover from centuries of damage. "Ambassador Chenthor," a voice called. Sarah turned to see Marco, now the facility's chief of operations, hurrying toward them with a tablet. "The latest statistics from the Integration Initiative are in." The numbers were impressive. Over 10,000 human-alien couples had registered their relationships in the past year alone. Hybrid births, while still rare, were becoming more common as medical knowledge advanced. Universities across Earth had opened xenobiology and xenocultural studies departments. And the opposition? Zaxthor asked, his colors showing mild concern. Decreasing steadily, Marco replied. The success of the medical programs has changed a lot of minds. It's hard to maintain prejudice when alien techniques are saving human lives, and vice versa. Sarah smiled, remembering the early days when even the suggestion of human-alien cooperation had seemed radical. Now, her daughter's generation was growing up taking it for granted. A commotion from the garden drew their attention. Aurora had managed to teach one of the human children how to produce a faint color change, something that should have been impossible. "Mommy, Daddy, look," Aurora called excitedly. "Tommy's learning." Sarah and Zaxthor exchanged stunned looks. The implications were staggering. Humans might have more adaptive potential than anyone had realized. Dr. Chen, one of the medical researchers, burst into the office. "You need to see this. We've been analyzing the genetic data from the Integration Initiative participants. It appears that prolonged close contact with alien species is triggering subtle changes in human DNA, beneficial ones." Sarah wasn't entirely surprised. Her own body had changed dramatically since her first pregnancy, developing abilities that should have been impossible for humans. But to learn that similar changes were occurring in other humans who worked closely with aliens. We're evolving, she realized. Not just through hybrid children, but through simple interaction. Humanity isn't just joining galactic society, we're adapting to it. The conservation faction, now a shadow of its former self, had warned that human integration would change the galaxy. They'd been right, just not in the way they'd feared. Later that evening, after Aurora was asleep in her room, the ceiling programmed to show the stars of both her ancestral homes. Sarah and Zaxthor sat in their garden. The facility was quiet, Earth's moon casting a gentle light that made their color patterns seem to glow. "The council's sending another delegation next week," Zaxthor mentioned, his colors showing amusement. Apparently, some of the older species are concerned about the pace of human advancement. They're calling it the Aurora effect, the way humanity seems to catalyze change wherever we go. Sarah laughed. "Are they worried we're advancing too quickly?" "More like worried they're not keeping up." Zaxthor's colors shifted to thoughtful patterns. "You humans, you don't just adapt, you help others adapt too." Aurora's class today was proof of that. A shooting star streaked across the sky, and Sarah was reminded of that first night in Central Park, when a flash of light had changed her life forever. Now, looking at the thriving facility around them, at their growing family, at the way Earth and the galaxy were transforming together, she felt a deep sense of rightness. "We got a new application for the exchange program today," she mentioned. A young conservation faction couple wanting to study human art. Apparently, their daughter can't stop talking about Earth music. Zaxthor's colors rippled with laughter. The times really are changing. From inside the house came a soft glow. Aurora was dreaming, her colors painting her room with stories of worlds yet to be discovered. Their unborn child stared, its own colors adding to the symphony of light and love that had become their family's signature. "What do you think the galaxy will be like when they grow up?" Sarah wondered, watching the stars that now seemed so much closer than they had 5 years ago. Zaxthor wrapped his arms around her, their colors merging in the way that still made her heart race. "I think it will be exactly what we fought for, a place where love knows no boundaries, where difference is celebrated, and where every child can reach for the stars without fear." As if in response, the night sky seemed to pulse with possibility. Somewhere up there, thousands of other couples, human and alien alike, were forging their own paths, creating their own families, breaking down barriers that had stood for millennia. And it had all started with a simple truth that Sarah and Zaxthor had discovered on that first incredible night. That love, in all its forms, was the most powerful force in the galaxy. Aurora's dreams continued to paint the night with colors of hope, while beneath Sarah's heart, their second child added its own hues to the family palette. The future stretched out before them, as infinite and beautiful as the stars themselves. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly how it should be.